Hey, welcome to World Entertainment. Do you remember back in the day when Sony wanted to do a Black Cat and Silver movie? Well, apparently details have come out about their movie that's obviously been scrapped, and it's been scrapped for a hell of a long time. And apparently it's being called an awful origin story idea for Felicia Hardy. So we're going to have a look at this because I do remember people were kind of on board, being the fact that they were saying as long as they keep them feminine and stuff like that, it could possibly work. But of course, after the likes of Madam Web bombed, and then of course Morbius and all that stuff, they very quickly scrapped this. And I think the story about the movie being in production, I think that came out during the Sony leaks, when they were talking about like a Men in Black and 21 Jump Street crossover type movie and stuff like that. But let's have a look and let's see what was in store for us had this thing actually happened. So it's saying, in the late 2010s, we learned of Sony Pictures' plans for a Silver and Black, a movie that was set to pair up Silver Sable and Black Cat. The project, which received a mixed response from fans when it was announced, featured Spider-Man villains like Scorpion, Tarantula, Chameleon, Mandel, Storm, and even Norman Osborn. The old guard's Gina Prince Batewood had signed up to direct, only for the movie to ultimately fall apart. Sony then pivoted to two individual solo projects for Silver and Black's leads, though it's unclear whether the plan was still for the two heroes to join forces down the line. Like El Muerto or something, I have no idea who that is, Spider-Woman and Agent Venom, among others. Black Cat is no longer happening. We recently learned that Sony is now more willing to share its Marvel characters with Marvel Studios and the Spider-Man franchise. No doubt a result of Morbius, Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter all flopping. I still love that when Morbius flopped, they thought the meme of its Morbin time meant people wanted to see it again in theaters, and they re-released it to flop again. So that movie has to go down in history as the first movie to flop twice on the big screen. So now some new Black Cat details have been revealed by ex-user Nerd Tower YouTube, I think is why it's YT, who claims to have seen storyboards from the movie when it was in production in 2021. So this is what they wrote on X. Spill some gossip. In 2021, there was a Black Cat movie in production. I saw storyboards, and in a specific sequence, she was dressed as a goth at a costume party, cries in a bathroom, smears her makeup, and makes the mask. Bam, Black Cat ready for action. It was awful. So it sounds like the mask was going to be like her makeup that she forms after crying. Okay, so that is awful, but it was to be expected given how clunky and cringeworthy the origin stories were we saw for characters like Morbius and Kraven were. Whether she would have still got an actual mask is hard to say, but Felicia Hardy is another character who most fans would much prefer to see on screen alongside Spider-Man. That, of course, would be the fans who even know about these characters. So there had been plans for her to appear in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4, while Felicity Jones briefly played a character called Felicia in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So Prince Batewood, or whatever their name is, previously said on Silver and Black, I wanted to go edgier than some of the Marvel films. It was a question of how far could I push it in that Marvel universe. Well, you wouldn't have been in that Marvel universe, so it wouldn't have mattered. Silver and Black put me in the conversation. I was one of those couple of women people go to for these big films. I knew what kind of movies Skydance make. It was exhilarating and nerve-wracking. I knew I loved this project partly because I could do everything I wanted to do from the other film. An edgier superhero film with two women. So that just sounds like she was on this whole thing of I'm just making movies for girl power crap, blah blah blah. I also think it's funny that she kind of contradicts herself. The question was, how far could I push it? and then follows it up by saying, I could do whatever I wanted to make it an edgy superhero. How could you? If you were asking, well, how far can I push it? If you were saying, I could go as far as I wanted. It's interesting that Skydance was in there. I don't know why Skydance would have any involvement with it. Plus, again, it's funny that she's saying, like, because I want to push it in the Marvel universe. You're not in the Marvel universe. You're a completely separate entity. You're the Sony end of things. You are not the MCU. Which is what happened with Sydney Sweeney and Dakota Johnson when they announced that they were going to be in Madam Web. If you remember that, they put out the tweets and tagged in at the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And everybody was like, oh, they think they're in like a proper MCU movie. They don't really realize what they're actually signing up for. So it says, what would you like to see from Black Cat on the big screen down the line? Nothing, because it'll probably never happen, which I think is hilarious. But we're starting to hear a lot about all these type of movies that were meant to happen and all got cancelled. And of course, why wouldn't they get cancelled? I mean, it's terrible. But then there's another one that dropped down saying, Silver and Black Cat, everything you need to know about Sony's unmade Black Cat and Silver Sable team up. So this part says, Silver and Black appeared to be a priority for Sony Pictures in the late 2010s, and the plan had been to give us a Silver Sable and Black Cat team up before they assembled as part of an all-female team of heroes. Scorpion, Tarantula, Chameleon, Tombstone, and Norman Osborn were all set to factor into filmmaker Gina Prince Bythewood's, I'm probably butchering that last name, movie. Alas, even after giving the green light to the disasters like Morbius and Madam Web, Sony reached a point where they were deciding this project wouldn't work, leaving it on the scrap heap with El Muerto, or whatever it is, Spider-Woman and more. I believe the Spider-Woman was meant to be Olivia Wilde, and that only recently got scrapped, by the way. There was a story about it. I thought about doing the story and then I thought, no, because I never actually remembered hearing about it. So it says, yesterday we shared some details about the Sony's blah, 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 the thing we just talked about. So when Silver and Black fell apart, solo outings for the two leads were briefly considered. That's brought Felicia Hardy back into the conversation and now seems a good time to revisit that, what might have been. So that's what they were talking about when everything we just went over there a minute ago. The movie was set, by the way, this is back to Silver and Black. The movie was set to mostly revolve around Silver Sable, a bounty hunter for the US Department of Justice, attempting to track down Felicia Hardy to bring her to her paymasters. In the past, Black Cat had volunteered to undergo an experimental surgery at the hands of Dr. Mendel Storm, using his comic book alias Gaunt, which would have seen AI tech installed in her body to give the Master Thief powers capable of enhancing her skill set. It's unclear whether that means she was going to have Domino-style bad luck abilities, but it seems likely it was just Felicia's strength and speed that would end up being enhanced. It's funny to hear these details that they're putting in for that character when this other detail we just went over was them saying, oh, you know, she basically becomes Black Cat by crying in a bathroom and smearing the style of the mask from her runny makeup on her face, which, okay, that's weird. So does she have the powers at that stage or not? Don't know. So it says Silver Sable's grudge. So Black Cat escaped from Storm by using her newfound abilities, even though she wouldn't have entirely mastered them at this point, and headed straight for the border. It says for the border and South America. I think they meant to say the border of South America. Silver Sable, meanwhile, would have her own motivations for wanting to capture Felicia. Gaunt was responsible for the deal of her father, Ernest Sable Nova, not to mention the torture and death of many of her fellow Smearcans, or whatever the hell they're called, who hail from the anti-hero fictional home country. So Sable planned to use Hardy to lead her back to Gaunt, so she could take her revenge on the villains. So it just sounds like it was all going to be an absolutely terrible idea, and it was just another, like, let's just use all the Spider-Man characters without Spider-Man. It's like, why would anybody care? Especially if it was just the lead. All of it was the lead to just a flat-out all-girl superhero team-up. It's like, okay. And then you did it with Madam Web, and you didn't put them in the suits until the flashback type things, or flash forwards, are supposed to wear near the end of the movie. And even by then, you still didn't actually put them in the suits. So you basically had a superhero movie minus the superheroes. That's what you had with Madam Web. What a train wreck that was. But it's a good thing that these have been scrapped, because let's face it, they would never worked. And especially in today's climate, the way all these movies are being looked at nowadays, even if it was a groundbreaking, actually fantastic movie, nobody would have bothered to go and see it anyway, because it'd been just like, yeah, we already see what you're trying here, good luck and thanks. So it wouldn't have worked. So they're not doing it. It has been scrapped, but that apparently is what the stories were for these movies. And the whole idea that she was going to cry her mask on by rubbing the makeup is just weird. But what do you guys think? Would you have liked to have seen a Black Cat movie, and of course Black and Silver, which again, that information came out way back when for that movie. So let me know what you think. And with that, I shall leave it there for this one. So do like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Cheers, and I shall catch you in the next one.